Call the meeting to order, the City Council meeting on July 21st, our special meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I think flags behind me. Colin, will you start us off?
Sure thing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lynn, would you please call the roll?
Yes, 1 second, my pen died. Councilperson Hurst? Here. Councilperson Clem? Councilperson Williams?
Here.
Councilperson Gully?
Here.
Councilperson Zilli?
Here.
Councilperson Alvarez?
Here.
Councilperson Podgorski?
Here.
Mayor Lynch?
Here. We have new business, introduction of ordinances, public hearing, first reading ordinance 20-05. Scott?
Gina, would you take that, please?
Sure. Hoping you guys can hear me. So, ordinance 2005, an ordinance of the City of Portage, amending Chapter 90, Article 5 of the City of Portage Municipal Code, entitled Zoning Map. Be it and hereby is ordained by the Common Council of the City of Portage, Indiana, as the following. Section 1, this ordinance shall amend Chapter 90, Article 5 of the City of Portage Municipal Code and accompanying zoning map for the following manner. The zoning shall be changed from C1, small to medium scale commercial, and IS, institutional uses, to R2, low density residential, on the property identified by the attached legal description of in attachment A, 87,343 square feet or 2 acres. Section 2, contingencies, none. Section 3, conflicting ordinances. Any ordinance or provision of any ordinance in the City of Portage in conflict with the provisions of this ordinance is hereby repealed. Section 4, severability. The invalidity of any section, clause, sentence, or provision of this ordinance shall not affect the validity of any other part of this ordinance which can be given effect without such invalid part or parts. Section 5, effective date. This ordinance shall be in full force and effective from and after its passage and adoption by the Common Council and approval of the Mayor of City of Portage, Indiana.
So do we have someone who would like to speak on this, please, and present? Senator Talion, thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me, or do I need to move this
We
around?
can't hear you.
Pardon?
I don't think they can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Attorney Whitten. Yes, this petition is for a 2-acre parcel that is located on the northeast corner of Chrisman Road and Portage Avenue. It's currently zoned commercial C1 and institutional, and the petition is to rezone this to residential. Now, this parcel, I want to explain some history here. The parcel is adjacent to another 10-acre parcel that is also owned by the petitioner, which is also residential. And this request is actually the first step of a larger plan, which is for a subdivision in the entire 12-acre parcel. So the petitioner was advised to go through the zoning change on this corner piece first. Some years ago, approximately 2005 and 6, the 10-acre parcel had been submitted for subdivision approval, and it was approved. Everything was ready, except at that time it did not include this 2-acre piece on the corner. The subdivision was never built, the market tanked, the owner passed away, but the plan now is to rebuild that subdivision, 12 acres, into a 16-lot subdivision. This has been through the staff. It was recommended. It was also has gone through the Plan Commission where it was passed and recommended. Sorry. The entire 2009 comprehensive zoning plan contemplates this entire area being used as low-density residential. The current uses are compatible with this. The adjacent property is mostly residential. The parcel across the street, the site of the old Chrisman School, which is now owned by the city, I believe, right, is now a vacant lot. It's also zoned R2. The parcel directly to the east is the Hope Lutheran Church, which is a compatible use in a residential neighborhood. There's one piece of commercial property on Chrisman Road that's adjacent, but that is currently unoccupied, but the petitioner does not have control of that property, and it's just sitting there. So this is a good thing for the city. If we can build this subdivision in there, it will add to the tax base and add value to this entire parcel of the city. So it's been recommended by the staff report, it was recommended by the Plan Commission, and now we're asking for rezone. And I'm sorry I missed you last meeting. And I'll take any questions if you have any questions.
So the subdivisions that is being proposed, they're just going to build around that existing commercial business that's unoccupied on Chrisman Road?
Well, the subdivision will enter off of Portage Avenue.
Okay.
And this, right near where this parcel is, just on the east side of this parcel. That piece, we don't have any control over that piece, but the subdivision will then go back and build along and abut the subdivision that's already there.
West of Stormy.
Yes.
Do you know what the buffer zone is between those lots, those homes on Stormy and where this new proposed development is going to be?
I don't know that. I don't have all of the plans with me for the new subdivision because we're not here for subdivision approval. We were just
Okay.
trying to get that.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't have that with me, Scott.
Does the board have any further questions?
And I think Senator Italian brings up a good point. As I said at our last meeting, this is a first of several steps that this prospective developer will have to take. This rezone doesn't give them the right, if you grant it, will not give them the right to encroach on any wetlands, will not give them the right to encroach on any buffer zones. When they come for their plat approval, it will be vetted to see if they need variances. If it's up to them to find a subdivision plat that fits within our zoning on that piece of property, or go through the variance procedure, and that will be a whole nother line of hearings and discussions. So I don't want anybody from the public particularly to think that a rezone consideration is doing anything other than saying, instead of this zoning allowing you to build this there, we're going to rezone it and allow you to build, this is a down zone, actually, residential. So all of this stuff, and those are great questions, Scott, and I know that a lot of folks in the audience have had those questions. This will have no bearing on that. They will still have to go through the process and still have to meet code.
Right. And it had, this subdivision, pretty much the same plan, has been approved once before. So we expect that it will be in line with everything that is needed. But right now, this is step one, which is to rezone that corner.
So we will now open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the zoning change, please step to the microphone. You have 2 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against the proposed zoning change? Anybody wishing to speak against the zoning change? Anyone wishing to speak against the zoning change? The public hearing is now closed. We have ordinance 20-06, amending Chapter 90, Article 5. Scott.
Brian, would you take that, please?
Yep. Ordinance number 20-6, an ordinance of the City of Portage, Indiana, amending Chapter 90, Article 5 of the City of Portage Municipal Code entitled Zoning Map. Be it, and it hereby is ordained by the Common Council of the City of Portage, Indiana, as follows. Section 1. This ordinance shall amend Chapter 90, Article 5 of the City of Portage Municipal Code and accompanying zoning map in the following manner. The zoning shall be changed from NC, Neighborhood Commercial, and R2, Low-Density Residential, to C2, Medium to Large-Scale Commercial on the property identified in Attachment A, 16.14 acres. Let the record reflect that this has been read in its entirety.
Is there anyone wishing to present this proposed zoning change? Please come to the microphone.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Todd Leith. I'm here on behalf of the petitioner in this matter. A handout is being passed down the row, and I'll wait for everyone to get a handle on that because I want to call your attention to the large first page, which has been folded accordion style. Thank you. So the property in question tonight is shown on the southeast quadrant or corner of Highway 6 and Swanson Road. It wraps around the Valvoline oil change facility in that location. It's 32 acres overall, and it's outlined in the thin red line. On the east is Willow Creek, the actual flow of the waterway, and it runs all the way down to the subdivision on the east side of Swanson. This drawing is important because it's your zoning map, if you will, and it shows in color the different zoning classifications. You can see the bulk of the 32 acres today is that purple shade, and that's residential R2, low-density residential zoning classification. You can see up at the top along Highway 6, it's yellow, and that today is neighborhood commercial. That depth is approximately 270 feet deep. So the request today is to extend the commercial zoning further to the south, but not all the way south. We're not talking about the entire 32 acres to be rezoned. We're actually talking about half and half. It's almost exactly half and half. So the northern portion, we would like to extend to the C2 zoning classification. And if you look to the east on the opposite side, or the east side of Willow Creek, you can see that light green area. That's C2 in very close proximity. So essentially the request is to bring that C2 zoning all the way through to Swanson Road, leaving the southern 16 acres of this overall 32-acre parcel just as it is today in the R2 residential classification. The balance of the property, that 16 acres, is 530 feet approximately feet deep between the southern edge of the new zoning classification that we're asking for and that existing subdivision, 530 feet. So we think that in that 530 feet, we would have 2 roads out onto Swanson, a loop road, and 4 rows of homes. It's nearly 2 football fields long, that 530 feet. So there's a great buffer between the existing residents and the commercial to the north that we're asking for. The other thing that I want to point out is that this has gone through your plan commission. There was a public hearing there. It received a favorable recommendation after that public hearing. The comprehensive plan was studied by your staff, and the staff report submitted that this is consistent with your comprehensive plan. One of the things that you're supposed to do is look to that comprehensive plan and pay reasonable regard to that comprehensive plan as you consider zoning changes such as mine and the one that Senator Talion brought to you. And in our case, the staff report concluded that it does comply with that. The other thing that I think is important is the traffic count on Highway 6 is very high. It's 20,114 cars per day in the last INDOT, Indiana Department of Transportation, traffic count taken last year in 2019. Over 20,000 cars per day. Now, the existing zoning is commercial, and it is, in fact, true, but that's neighborhood commercial. And I suggest to you that neighborhood commercial doesn't have 20,000 cars going by every day. The depth of this property and the fact that it's neighborhood commercial suggests to me that if you do not plan globally now before you have multiple sales of this property, you're going to get what I refer to as one-offs. You're going to get another Valvoline oil change type of use, a mom-and-pop retail dotting Highway 6, and you're going to have 5 driveways and no comprehensive planning going on. What we're suggesting is to enlarge the zoning classification to allow for a development much as you see just on the east side of Willow Creek, where the Aldi's and that inline shopping center sits. This zoning classification would allow for that. And as I indicated, we have that great buffer between the existing residents. There would be a new residential subdivision in the R2 somewhere down the road, and then the commercial up on Highway 6, quite frankly, where it belongs, where those 20,000 cars are going by every day. I do know that there's some concerns that have been raised at the Plan Commission, and since then, with regard to water quality, with regard to wetlands, some environmental concerns, if you will. Willow Creek is a sensitive watershed, and that the creek itself is important. It's so important that you have an ordinance that protects it. The ordinance goes back all the way to 2000. It's 20 years old, and it establishes 3 buffer criteria that in different buffering strips is 70 feet from the top of the bank. And each of those buffer strips provides for different protections. And as I indicated at the Plan Commission, because we're 32 acres, I would not anticipate that we would encroach upon any of those buffers with a variance request, which the city can give and did give to the property on the east side. But we've got 32 acres. The property on the east side was very squeezed. It was less than 3 acres. We can work around those buffer yards very easily. And in fact, we'll commit that we will not encroach upon any of those buffer yards to protect the Willow Creek pursuant to your own ordinance. We also have a significant number of wetlands. And that's the second sheet in the handout, is the wetlands map that's been presented to my client from his consultants at Weaver Consultants out of Naperville, Illinois. Weaver Consultants, its predecessor was Weaver Booz. You may have heard of that company as well. Weaver Booz does a lot of work in Northwest Indiana, probably here in Portage as well. I've worked with them on many projects over the years. It's an excellent company. And Mr. Stefanik, I've worked with him on many, many projects over the years. We shared a common client, one I had for 27 years, all throughout the Midwest. And I can tell you that this developer has done it right. They've gone out and studied the wetlands. You don't get too many petitioners who stand here at a rezoning knowing what we know about the wetlands on this particular piece of property, 32 acres of it. Well, you can see that there's a significant number of wetland impacts on the property. There's 9 of them identified. And we know which ones are good and which ones are bad. We know that the Army Corps of Engineers has agreed with that delineation. We don't have it in writing yet. It's pending. The Army Corps of Engineers is slow to give their written delineations due to COVID, just like many businesses, many things going on in the world that we live in today. But we are assured that that delineation is going to be made official by the Army Corps of Engineers. We know that 2 of those wetlands, 2 of the larger ones, are important. They are connected to Willow Creek. And the cost of trying to fill and mitigate those would be very much cost prohibitive. However, the other ones are isolated. They're not connected hydrology-wise to Willow Creek, and they may very well be impacted and filled during development. However, whatever we do is going to have to be permitted. And whatever you do isn't going to change what we have to do to get permits. The Army Corps of Engineers has a very well-established, since 1972, the Clean Water Act created wetlands. And the Clean Water Act has plenty of regulations, plenty of teeth to make sure that we protect the wetlands. And if we do impact the wetlands, that we do it in the legal way and in accordance with good practices. The wetlands, I think it's also important, if you know, the wetlands that are most sensitive, I think are outlined in green on that handout, if I'm not mistaken. Exactly. So the two larger ones on the south end, the southeast and the one right in the center, are the ones that are kind of outlined in green. Those are the ones that we think are hydrology connected to Willow Creek. Those will be protected.
Can you give us the numbers on those?
Yeah, so it's 8
8, yeah.
and
Two.
2, exactly. 1 and 2 are hard to tell which way they go. 2 and 8.
Thank you.
We think that those are going to be protected by the Army Corps, and the beauty of it is that those two, if you can kind of compare between the first drawing and the second drawing, kind of fall in the middle of, or near the middle of, the mix between the commercial and the residential, and that works out really well for both developers. It's not in the middle of either one of those developments, so they can be, if you will, protected along the property lines when those two properties are split between two different developers, a residential developer and a commercial developer. So it works out really well. The other thing that I want to make a point of is, and Attorney Witten kind of indicated that as well, not only do we have to, if we go forward with your blessing on the zoning change, have to get Army Corps of Engineer permits for anything that we would do that would impact the wetlands, but we also have a long way to go with your city as well. We have to work with the site review. We have to work with subdivision control if we are subdividing. All of those things are, frankly, much more time-consuming, much more costly, and require a lot more engineering than we do here today. We've done a lot. We've done some drawings. We've done some preliminary designs. We know where the wetlands are. We've spent a lot of money. My client has spent a lot of money to get to this point to tell you about those wetlands, because we know they're there. We're not coming in with a white sheet of paper and a red line around 32 acres and telling you what we want to do. We know what's there, and we know how it can be developed. But what we would like to do is have the ability to move forward and design such a project. Whatever you do with the zoning isn't going to change the impacts on the wetlands. If this were all residential and someone builds a subdivision, they're going to impact the wetlands. They're going to go to the Army Corps of Engineers and seek the same relief that a commercial developer would. The change of zoning isn't going to change, in my opinion, the impacts on the wetlands. It's not going to change the impacts on the communities, except for the fact that what's in the buildings will be different, the activities in those buildings. But the environmental impact of the wetlands, the environmental impact of Willow Creek, all of that is well protected. Trust your ordinances. They do that job very, very well. But what happens inside the buildings is zoning, and that's the request today. With that, Your Honor, I'll just simply ask for your approval, and I look forward to answering any questions that you might have or those that come from the public.
Counsel?
I don't have anything at this point. I don't know.
What are they planning on developing? I have no idea what they're planning to put in.
Well, and that's a good question. We don't know either. So if someone's against the project, all they would be saying is that they're against retail, because that's the zoning that is there today, and that's the zoning that we're asking for. It just allows us to have more intense retail. We can have an inline store rather than, as I said, 5 or 6 individual mom and pop driveways.
Are there any further questions?
I have a question. I don't know who might be able to answer it. AJ, you might be able to. What's the difference between retail sales low intensity and retail sales medium intensity? What's the difference between those two in our definitions? Does anybody know? If not, I'll get the answer from Kurt, but.
Well, I just so happen to have that definition. I'm happy to share it with you.
That would be great.
So, permit me to read, because that's, I think, what you've asked me to do. So, retail sales low intensity is retail businesses that have a low impact on neighboring properties, traffic generation, and public safety. Example businesses include a bookstore, small, craft gallery, small, gift shop, medium, boutique, medium, jewelry store, small, flower shop, medium, art gallery, medium. For purposes of this zoning ordinance, retail sales do not include retail rental of any vehicle. And then medium is retail businesses that have a moderate impact on neighboring properties, traffic generation, and public safety. Examples include an antique shop, apparel shop, art and craft stores, auto parts sales, a bookstore large, building finish store small, building supply store small, computer sales, it goes on. There's another 5 or 6 or 7 lines of examples, but I think you get the flavor of that. I would submit to you that a traffic count of 20,000 cars per day is more consistent with C2, and that's why I provided you with this map to show that if you go just on the other side of Willow Creek, you find that. And of course, the further east you go, you're going to find C2 throughout the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lees.
Thank you.
We will now open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this zoning change? Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this zoning change? Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this zoning change? Anyone wishing to speak against the zoning change? If you are speaking, please limit your time to 2 minutes.
Thank you, City Councilor. Reverend Michael Cooper, 5455 Clem Road, along Willow Creek, and I'm also a member of the Northwest Indiana Green Party. I'm here to speak against the rezoning. I would first like to submit to the record some letters that were emailed to city councilors over the past 2 weeks, letters from the Hoosier Environmental Council, the Isaac Walton League, Save the Dunes, and today I hope you received it from Ferris from the Sierra Club Duneland chapter. I'll submit those for the.
Thank you.
I also have a note from Ron Havens. He's a retired steel worker and not in good health, and he's not able to want to risk coming here tonight. Ron lives on Ardmore in a house he built 24 years ago. He enjoys feeding the birds and watching the 2 fawns at the salt block at the edge of his property. His request for City Council is to make this property a walking park like Coffee Creek. So I have his thing he gave me to give to City Council as well.
Thank you.
I want to provide some 3 points from the attorney's speech. The clarification about the C2 on the opposite side. As he did mention, it is zone C2, but there was a variance issued for the building of that property on the opposite side of Willow Creek into the buffer zone, an issue that I'm still waiting for clarification, Attorney Whitten. So thank you if I can get that sometime.
Well, I think that's been sent to the clerk treasurer's office.
Yes.
So you can expect that.
Also mentioned the public hearing that was before zoning. The way this property currently is, it's about 6 or so properties and looking to rezone the 4 northern properties, and the lower 2 properties are the ones that are remaining residential. Because they didn't combine the properties into the plats into one property to begin this process, they only had to notify the property owners adjacent to the property, which would be the 2 southern parcels. So none of the residents to the 2 parcels were owned by the same person. So none of the residents along Ardmore were notified of the public hearing that was happening at Planning Commission. Also, the third point, the 2009 Portage Comprehensive Plan referenced by the attorney and in the staff report does not only cover zoning and development, it also includes a section on our natural environment that highlights the needs of our city to, quote, protect, preserve, enhance, and develop natural resources within the city. Where develop in this context I take to mean grow into maturity, not to turn into a parking lot. As the property is currently, it is not sellable. It is not profitable to build with the extensive wetlands that would require significant mitigation. I understand the reason for the property owner wanting to rezone it for a profitable sale, but there are also reasons why it is not in the best and long-term interest of the city for this property to be rezoned. Given the significant benefits that these wetlands at the beginning point of Willow Creek have in maintaining the water quality of this vital waterway that runs the full length of Portage, and the benefits to surrounding neighborhoods with its natural retention of stormwater, it is more consistent with our comprehensive plan that calls us to protect, preserve, and enhance and develop natural resources within our city. If this body votes to rezone, the proverbial snowball begins to roll down the hill, and then there's no more stops to save these wetlands. A corporation walks away from this city with a pocket full of cash, and we forever lose a natural asset for the health of our environment. Tonight, I asked our city council to live by the Portage Comprehensive Plan and begin the process to protect, preserve, and enhance this natural resource by voting against this rezoning. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak against?
Hi, council members. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I'm Gina Bickers. I live at 5652 Ardmore, and also my neighbors Michelle Perrigan at 5670 Ardmore, and Amanda and Steve Steele at 5676 Ardmore. We are all opposed to this rezoning. I have been on Ardmore. We moved there in April of 2001. Since April of 2001, that same property has been for sale, and so kind of don't really understand why all of a sudden we want to develop that. There are other areas in the city that are ready for development or empty. We already have many, many empty buildings, as you guys know. I mean, he talked about Willow Creek and over there, and when I go over there, I see multiple empty strip malls. So I really don't think what Portage needs is another strip mall. In response to Mr. Cooper, I agree with that. I think we should preserve that area. I've seen wildlife from coyotes to deer, possums, raccoons, everything back there in those wetlands. And if we destroy that, then we are destroying their home. And you know, I don't think that's right. And again, I'd say my biggest thing is the fact that there's already plenty of retail developments that are either already established or places that are available for this kind of zoning. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against? Please step forward and speak into the mic.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Maurice Joyner, and my wife and I and my son live at 3645 Mansfield Street. I just want to make a point, 2 points the attorney made, that there's 20,000 cars of traffic going down Ridge Road, so in my opinion, I never think there will be a residential development. And also about the wetlands, we heard no mention of if property development was there, where would new wetlands 3 times that amount be replaced in the city? Just as my neighbor said, a lot of wildlife. Just recently, I don't know because of COVID, but rabbits have been on our deck. We've been at that property since December 2001. A few more key points. Pollution of lighting. Some residents that live on Ardmore Street, that's the rear of their home where their bedrooms are. We live on the corner of Mansfield and Ardmore. Once again, that's lighting pollution. While we've been there, Even during the 2008 flood, we have never had flooding at our property. East of Ardmore, there's a creek for runoff. When the water at this new development has nowhere to go, it will run off the creek and it possibly will affect our homes. Also, property values have increased. Even despite of the housing bubble, they continue to increase. Will this new small strip mall development add value to our properties? There's a lot of properties in Portage that's open, where Kelsey's was, the Sears property, Lowe's. There's a lot of property for development. I am totally against this, and I will see it all the way through, and I'll tell my neighbors, and I'll keep coming. It's been a great place to live. We've been almost 20 years. We've raised our son. We enjoy the property, and we've made an investment, and we don't want to lose that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to speak against? Is there anyone else who would like to speak against? Ma'am, do you have a mask? Sorry.
Awesome, thank you.
I've been wearing a mask ever since this pandemic started, and today I forgot. I'd like to reiterate pretty much what everybody else is saying. There's so many other businesses that have been unsuccessful. The movie theaters, for instance. Lots of movie theaters are no longer in operation. There's businesses that office space for rent haven't been rented. There's just so many other areas that have not been successful that possibly we could reconsider what we're doing and do it there for whatever reason we're doing this. And again, there is that creek, like this gentleman just said, and I think it will affect the water in our subdivision, the flow of the water in the subdivision. And that's a very nice subdivision. There's lots of homes there, lots of families, established families, and I really think the wetlands are very valuable to the community and the environment. And again, I wish to pursue this as far as it goes. Thank you.
Ma'am, would you please state your name and address for the
Oh,
record?
sure. Irma Watts, 5714 Ardmore in Portage.
I didn't get your name.
Irma, I-R-M-A, Watts, W-A-T-T-S.
Thank you.
Thank you, Irma.
Uh-huh.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak against the proposed zoning change?
Hello, my name's Angelo Howard, 3652 Mansfield Street. Maurice is my across the street neighbor, and I agree with everything he says. Thank you.
Did you get the address? It's Mansfield. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against?
Hey guys, I'm Missy. I live at 5095 Concord Avenue here in Portage. I had the esteemed pleasure of representing the Save the Dunes advocacy group this March in Washington, D.C. And while I was there, I was able to understand how vital the wetlands is to our city. I was amazed at how the wetlands, oh, I said that, okay, never mind. The toxins that would be introduced from the overflow from the floodwaters will be damaging to the other habitats that we have locally, and we can't have that. So I just want to remind you guys that even though the wetlands are incredibly vital, if the stormwater is introduced, it will damage the other natural habitats that we have. So it'll become like an environmental cataclysmic event for all the natural things we have here, and they're already endangered. So that's it.
Thank you, Missy. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against?
name's Richard Whelan at 5724 Ardmore Avenue. I'm against it. I just moved in there. My son lived there for a couple of years, and we lived on Loop Road before that, and how busy it was. And when I go out on my deck and see all the wildlife, and I'm a big fisherman and all that, I just think it's the wrong thing to do. And as far as with the water and everything, who knows if it's going to flood? And I just want to tell you that I'm against it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against? Anyone else who would like to speak against? Anyone else who would like to speak against? If not, the public hearing is now closed. Mr. Lee.
Would you like me to respond to some of the comments, or I'll be happy to answer your questions? How would you like me to proceed?
You can respond.
Thank you very much. There was a comment or suggestion that perhaps we should make this property an asset with some kind of recreational development, what have you, park, active recreation. I'm not sure what the suggestion exactly is, but that's not realistic, quite frankly. This is in private ownership, and any owner has the ability to, pursuant to your zoning ordinance, develop their property. That's their right. That's their property right. It's just not realistic, and I would submit to you that where those recreational assets should be further removed from a major highway corridor that has 20,000 cars going by. This is an asset, all right. This is an asset for exactly what we're proposing, retail development. Retail development doesn't belong everywhere, but in my opinion, it belongs in the traffic corridors where the infrastructure, the bridges, the roads, the utilities are already there. The assets that were suggested, recreational parks, can be removed from those because they don't need the amount of infrastructure that the city has to pay to build and maintain. And so this is the right place for retail, and those assets that are suggested as park land or recreational areas belong elsewhere, and that fits better. And that's what your comprehensive plan does talk about. We have a comprehensive plan that talks about different uses. And there was a comment made about the comprehensive plan fostering those kinds of assets. That is exactly true. Your comprehensive plan has something called a future land use map in your comprehensive plan. Well, guess what? It says that this property should be retail. It doesn't say what kind of retail, because that's not what a comprehensive plan does. The zoning map does that. But it doesn't say that this should be parkland. It doesn't say it should be reserved for the nature. Those are areas that should be fostered elsewhere, and that's what the comprehensive plan talks about. There was a suggestion that you rezone the property and my client walks away with a pocket full of cash. Well, he will make a profit, and that's the capitalistic economy that we operate in. But he doesn't walk away from the city of Portage because he's created an asset that will have an assessed value far more than it would if you had 5 one-offs, mom and pops. Your assessed value will go way up. And assessed value, as you well know, means property taxes. And that's assets to the city to create those parks, to create those things that he's interested in, that this community is interested in. There was also a suggestion by a couple of the residents who spoke. They talked about, we've got other areas that are vacant, And why can't we go there? Your zoning ordinance doesn't talk about, your comprehensive plan doesn't talk about quotas. If there's 7 insurance agencies in Portage and 2 more want to come, you don't tell them, no, we're full of insurance agents, we don't take any more of those. That's not what your zoning ordinance is about. Free enterprise dictates all of those details. And that's true with developing shopping centers, it's true with insurance agents, and it's true with any business. What your answer is, what your question should be, is does it harm the community? And most importantly, the residents that are close by. That's your focus under your ordinance, under the comprehensive plan. And I submit to you that we have 532 feet. We have an entire subdivision that will be in between this commercial and the existing homes that are there on Ardmore. An entire subdivision is going to be in there. Almost 2 football fields, 2 roads, and 4 rows of homes. The light pollution from this commercial is never going to make its way to this subdivision. Before the subdivision in between is developed, we have the densely wooded areas that are there to protect the light pollution. And when it is developed, you're going to have those homes there to buffer the existing residents. The wetlands mitigation was suggested at 3 times the impacts. So if we have to fill one of the larger wetlands I indicated to you, we would have to mitigate that through the Army Corps regulations. And he's correct, there isn't a 1-to-1 mitigation. It's usually a multiple of what is mitigated. And whether it's 3 times or whether it's 1.5 times or whether it's just simply 1-to-1 is dependent upon what the Army Corps values that wetland to be. It's probably going to be 1.5. That's what Weaver Booz has told us. I'm sorry, Weaver Consultants. That's what Weaver Consultants has told us. It's probably going to be 1.5 times that. And where that mitigation will occur, not our decision. The Army Corps tells us that. Missy came here and talked about wetlands and how vital they are. They are very valuable, very vital to the ecosystem. And that's why we have the Clean Water Act from 1972. And that's why anytime we impact those wetlands, we have to take action. We have to mitigate. And that's why my client spent all the money to identify exactly where those 9 wetlands are on this property. We could, like I said before, we could have come here and not showed you any of the wetland maps. We could have been completely blind to the environmental issues, but we didn't do that. We identified them because this petitioner is a responsible petitioner. He knows what's important. He knows what he has to do now because he's identified them in order to proceed. Don't penalize him for being a good developer. Don't penalize him for identifying what has to be done so that he knows and so that you know. Some of the wetlands are of such great quality that we're not going to be able to economically touch them. And I identified those. That's on the map that you have. Those are the 2 and 8, I think, is the numbers of those 2 wetlands. We think that those will be protected. Then lastly, there was a comment that we're just simply against it. I don't know what we're against, because what I'm asking you to do is allowed, just to a greater intensity on the inside of the building. We can develop the property tomorrow by right. We could build the homes on the R2 and we could build businesses along Highway 6. We could deal with those wetlands just in the same way or in a different way. But what we're asking you to do is allow us a little bit more room so that we can frankly do it right. So we can build an inline rather than a series of driveways, have a comprehensive, globally planned shopping center, rather than have 5 or 6 more driveways along Highway 6, and have small mom-and-pop type retail along there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with mom-and-pop. But I don't think that mom-and-pop shops go on Highway 6 because the value of the land is too much. The rents are typically higher. What you typically see along Highway 6 are the Applebee's, are the Valvoline oil changes, the national brands. That's what you're going to see in this area, I would think. And that's what can drive good development in this particular area. He closed with, I don't know if it's going to flood. It's not our ability to just simply, with your approval, start digging tomorrow. We have to prove to your engineers that it won't flood. We have to prove that the stormwater is going to be managed on site, outletted appropriately to Willow Creek or wherever that will go. But we don't get to make that decision. Science makes that decision. Gravity makes that decision. And engineering makes that decision. Those are the things that lie ahead of us if we receive your approval to go forward, to build a development according to your ordinances, according to sound engineering dictates. And that will guarantee that it's not going to flood. Those are things that every developer has to do. And as I said, we could build tomorrow and we would still have to do that. If we build with your C2 zoning change, then the pond is bigger, the stores are in line, there's likely only one shopping entrance into the shopping center instead of 5 or 6. It's a better planned development. And I think that's why we received a favorable staff report and a favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission. Thank you.
Mr. Lee, quickly, who owns the property? I've been trying to figure it out from property records, and I can't find it.
It was recently acquired by my client.
Okay.
My client is a company called River Point.
Okay. So it's not a company in St. Augustine, Florida?
That is River Point, so
Okay.
it is.
So they're not local at all, even in the tri-state area?
He is an investor, and he has investments in Porter County. This is his first one, I believe, in Portage.
Do you know where elsewhere in Porter County that he has investments?
He is currently working on a project on Highway 6 east of here. It has a Valparaiso address, but it's in unincorporated Porter County.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
You're very welcome.
This concludes the first reading of the public hearing. The public hearing is now closed. Are there any other matters not already considered by the council to come before the council?
Madam Chairman, if I may. So, just to be clear to the public, the next council meeting, the council will take up second reading of this proposed ordinance changing the zoning. The council may adopt, reject, or amend the ordinance, send it back down. That does not mean there's another public hearing, but that means that the council between now and the next meeting will consider your public comments. And at the next meeting, they will take action on the ordinance if they so choose.
Karen, did you?
The next meeting is August 4th, regular meeting August 4th.
Yes.
Yep, right here.
And it'll be right here, yes. So if there are no other matters to come before the council, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.